All right, everyone, welcome back to GDQ HOTFIX. We are nearing the end of our Super Metroid 25th anniversary celebration. Next up, we've got GT Code Classic with Insane Firebat, Nintoaster, and JRO. We've got a new person on commentary with us. It's going to be Derp. As usual, though, we're going to get this run started before we start talking about it too much, because the beginning of it is going to be mostly the same. Just another quick reminder, once we get this started, the race is going to go up on SRL. But Derp, how you doing? Can you tell us just a little bit about this while we make sure that the runners are ready?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I have a bit of a cold, so hopefully my commentary doesn't suffer too much. But yeah, so what GT code is, it's a dev code in Super Metroid. I'll kind of explain it more as we get into it, but in short, by using the code, you can get every item, every major item in the game, and use that to finish the game really fast. So pretty cool stuff. I'm really excited for this. I would be running, but unfortunately I am not able to at the moment. So instead I'll just yell at the people who are running instead.
How merciless are you going to be since you're now sitting on the sidelines?
Well, I think my PB is worse than all three runners here, so I guess I'm not in a position to say much.
Okay, we're just waiting for the final okays. So, what do you tell us a little bit about the runners, Nintoaster, Insane Firebat, and JRO?
So J-Ro is kind of the one I want to focus on most. Like, he's just really good at so many different categories. Like, he has a really good any percent time, GT Classic, obviously. He's also very good in the like item randomizer kind of thing. And Insane Firebat, I don't know him super well. He does a lot of races. Like, he's always in the Discord, like asking for any percent GT Classic races, which it's really cool to see somebody so dedicated just to the racing community. He's really cool.
All right,
And
so why
honestly,
don't
I
we
don't
finish?
know too much about Nintoaster.
Oh, okay. We do have the okay from everyone, so I'm gonna give them the heads up, and then we're gonna start the SRL timer. So let's get ready. All right, and there's a 10-second timer. So here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so let's get back on that thought. Tell us about GT code. You said it's a dev code, but what exactly does it do for the runners? What makes this so different?
Okay, so I think it was discovered around 2009-ish, but there's a boss in Lower Norfair. It's called Gold Torizo. We call it GT for short. And so if you enter the boss holding down all 4 face buttons, the game will give you every major item except for Screw Attack, which is in the room behind GT, 100 missiles, 20 power bombs, 20 supers, and 700 energy. That's not 7 E-tanks, but 700 energy exactly. And also 3 reserves, which all of that ends up being fairly important. Obviously, having every item in the game is pretty nice, especially just getting it all in one shot. So effectively, what this run here is getting to that point, the GT Classic, or the GT boss room, as fast as possible, doing the code, and killing all the bosses. So for the first 5 minutes or so, or really further than that, up until about the big pink room in Brinstar, it's not going to be anything unusual, just getting morph ball bombs, missiles, the normal stuff. But there's going to be a few route differences after that, and I'll explain them as we get to them. Really nice series times from all the runners there. I think they all had 45s, except J-Row. And so I guess we've all probably seen the early parts of these runs 3 or 4 times now, so like I said, there's not too much to say.
My understanding is that they're basically going to go for Gold Chorizo as fast as they can to unlock the code. How does that change up the early game with them? Like, how much safety stuff do they need to pick up before they can go activate the code?
Okay, so one of the major things that is really unique to this category and this category only is the runners actually won't be picking up Charge Beam, since, of course, doing the GT code will give them Charge Beam. So they never have to fight anything besides Kraid. They do need Varia to get to GT's room, but they never fight anything that they need Charge Beam for, so that's skipped. And then there's a couple E-Tanks, both the Kraid E-Tank and, if you're feeling a little bit risky, the High Jump E-Tank. Both can be skipped. You do need at least one E-Tank, though, for a trick to get into, like, deep enough into Norfair to get to GT's room, which I'll go over once we get there, but that's not for a little bit. And, yeah, there isn't a lot, like, after that, you just have every item, so there really aren't any safeties you can do. I mean, I guess you can pick up extra E-Tanks if you want, but there's no real need.
One thing worth mentioning is that due to this being a marathon and them wanting to have safety available, and they're doing an SRL race, they've agreed to take the same 3 saves, so just so that if anybody dies, they load from that save and it doesn't invalidate them from the SRL race.
Yeah, so I think since Firebat really doesn't play this game too much outside of all the races he does, I think his PB, which is a 35-minute time, I think he actually did that with 2 safety saves. I'm not totally sure about that. I would have to double check, but he's really good at this category, especially. And of course, so are the other 2 runners. But Firebat is somebody you might want to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, I was getting the impression from the other runners when we were setting this up that Firebat's kind of the one to watch in this race.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. We actually saw, I mean, like I said, we've all seen the climb plenty of times so far. We saw Nintoaster doing the ledge grab climb there instead of the, I guess, more traditional wall jump climb. Of course, they're both the same speed, so it doesn't really matter, but, you know, it is a thing that they decided. It looked like Firebat missed a missile there. That was a bit unfortunate. Had to go farm the bugs for a missile to open the door.
Would you count that as the commentator's curse right there?
Sure. I didn't really say anything about it, though. I guess I was praising Firebat. He makes one of the simplest mistakes, just missing the door. A stationary object. Oh well. But everyone had a fairly clean BT fight. And so they will go over and get their E-Tank. The Terminator room, I believe this is called. We call it that because, of course, they will be back. Since you have to go back this way on the way to Turian.
I didn't realize the joke behind this room was that simple.
Yeah. It's not too complicated. So one thing you'll notice they're doing here is they are missling the pirates. So if you watch primarily old route any percent runs, you might notice that a lot of runners just choose to damage through the pirates there. The reason they do this is to conserve health, since they will be going up Red Tower when they get there. Because that is the easiest way to get their first power bomb pack, which they will need to enter the lower Norfair where GT is. And there's a lot of damage boost to do that part of the game optimally, and a lot of damage boost means a lot of damage take. So they want to be as high health as they can. Also, that mock ball there, pretty standard stuff, but it is. Turns out it saves a lot of time over fighting sports. But that's something we've all seen before, hopefully. And so here, like I said, the runners will be skipping both the charge missile and charge beam. So they're just generally going to be picking up as few minor items as they can. So one missile, one super, one power bomb, because their ammo gets set to a certain amount from the GT code. So any extra ammo they pick up won't actually affect them for longer than a few minutes and waste time due to the fanfare. So it's generally not worth it. It's the same thing for charge beam, really, since they get charge beam by default. And like I said, you don't actually use it anywhere besides after you get it from the GT code. It's not worth picking up. And yeah, you see Nintoaster having a slight lead, but all three runners going up the red tower, having to do what we call a hero shot. So what you do is you shoot the beam in a certain spot, and you also do a little jump to manipulate the position of the rippers there. But you shoot the shot and then start wall jumping up the red tower. And if you do it fast enough, the shot won't go off the screen until it hits the block at the top. So you'll be able to hit the block from the platform below and just be able to jump through it. I didn't quite see who got it and who didn't. It only loses a couple seconds if you miss it, but all three of our runners are still really close getting first power bombs here. Yeah, this room with all the spikes is pretty dangerous. The optimal strat is just to do 2 damage boosts on the way through and 2 damage boosts on the way back, but each spike will do about 16 damage, so you're looking at 64 damage from that room alone, not counting the damage boost to get 2 first power bombs and back. So you can see why the runners decided to save the extra health in the green pirate room and missile down the pirates. So another little thing here is the runners are going to break open the Meridia tube since they have power bombs. This is slightly faster since entering from the right side with the tube already broken allows you to do a jump in the room before. And that entry is a little bit smoother. It saves actually more time than you would think, but it's not anything super big. But I think we saw all the runners do it. We at least saw Firebat. Another little strat I didn't see if the runners used. Actually, Nintoaster doesn't need to use it, but J-Ro did because he didn't have enough missiles. Is generally in this category you'll see the runners power bomb those green pirates before Kraid, since they don't have enough missiles, since they only picked up 1 missile pack and they don't really get a good chance to refill it unless they do farming strats. So that's just a little thing. You actually do need to be careful with how many power bombs you have, since optimally you have at least 1 entering Norfair just to pick up to get out of high jump without picking up the missile at the top of the room. And all our runners picking up Varia suit. I think they all got quick kill, which is really nice. And they're going to be heading back out. Luckily, Kraid provides a nice missile refill, so they won't need to use power bombs on the way out. We'll see which runners decide to pick up the Kraid E-Tank. Generally, especially in a race, the safer way to do this category is to pick up high jump. It's possible without high jump, but it's a lot harder. So I imagine all 3 runners are going to be picking up the high jump E-tank and skipping the crate E-tank. And it looks like, yeah, it looks like all 3 are doing that. That is because of a trick I've kind of mentioned before called the lava dive, which we will be seeing in just a couple minutes. And yeah, you can do it without high jump, but it is very hard. I'm actually kind of surprised all the runners are so close to each other, like this far in. Even though I guess we haven't gotten to the fun part yet, as some would call it. And you saw why they want a power bomb. It breaks the blocks in this room as well as kills the Sova there, which you would need to open the door. Although I think some of the runners opened the door the first time through, where they entered, picked up the E-tank, and killed the guy, and then turned around and shot the door. But if they didn't do that, they would have to kill the Sova before they exited the. So if they didn't have a power bomb, they wouldn't be able to kill it very easily, and would waste a lot of time waiting for it to be in a position where they could. And so here is the main. So there's 2 parts to this run that are scary, basically. And one of them is coming up, the lava dive, like I just said. And we see our runners taking the safety saves. The first one being before lava dive, of course. So there is a room, if you remember, if you've played this game, you know there's a big room filled with lava right before Lower Norfair. But picking up Gravity Suit is a lot slower than picking up Varia. So what's going to happen instead is what we call the lava dive, which Insane Firebat is doing right here. I'm going to kind of let him do it and then explain what happens. Okay, he kind of messed up the setup. Okay, really nice from Firebat, and hopefully J-Ro gets it as well. But so what you want to do, there's a good way to set up that entry, which you saw J-Ro do, lining up with one of the ledges in the room before, but it allows you to Morph Ball bounce all the way to the bottom of that lava pit, and then after that, it's just as simple as wall jumping off of the Namahe there, which you can see Nintoaster do, and then wall jumping under the other Namahe at the top. I think Nintoaster has enough health for this. Oh no, he missed it. Yeah, it's pretty simple to explain. You just wall jump from one side of the pit to the other, but it is a lot harder in practice. And that's why they took a safety save. And so the other really hard, I wouldn't say really hard, but the other trick in the run is the green gate glitch, which you just saw Firebat do. So how that works is, I'm not totally sure exactly how it works, but when there's a left-facing gate, if you have enough speed, your super missile, which changes speed depending on Samus's speed, has enough speed to clip through the gate and hit the button on the other side. It only works on left-sided gates for some reason. Not sure why. And you see the GT code there. They just enter the room holding down all 4 face buttons. They actually, if you enter the room from the other side, it still works. But the problem is the guy there, if you go to the left at the Lower Norfair elevator, the Chozo statue doesn't actually activate unless you have space jump, which would require you to go all the way through Meridia. And since that would be really slow, you just have to do the gate glitch. And another thing to mention, you saw both Insane Firebat and J-Ro do, and you'll see Nintoaster do in a second, is they actually have to menu and turn off Spazer, since the GT code will turn on both Spazer and Plasma, which if you shoot the beam with Spazer and Plasma equipped, it will crash the game, and that's not fun. And so, for at least for Firebat and J-Ro, that's all the threat they really have of dying done. So now it's just about getting through the rest of the game as fast as they can, and they have every item in the game available to them. Of course, they didn't get Screw Attack from the GT code, but they could just pick it up right away from the normal Screw Attack location right after the fight. But they have every movement item, of course, and they do have, even though the icons aren't showing, they have Grapple Beam and X-Ray Scope. So they are going to need to remember that, but the X-Ray Scope will actually come in handy in a little bit, which I think we saw a little bit of it during the RBMBO run, but I'll go over it a bit more when it happens this run. But X-Ray Charged Plasma does some weird things to certain bosses. Unfortunately, Ridley is not one of them, but luckily Ridley is not very difficult with this loadout, only taking 20 charge shots, and they have every item they could need. And so, the rest of this is just kind of standard. If you saw the 100% run, the Lower Norfair in this is going to be very similar if they do it ideally. I actually see J-Ro getting a really nice, or almost getting a really nice space jump all the way through these two rooms right before Ridley. Nintoaster unfortunately fell behind a little bit during the lava dive. It looked like he got Green Gate Glitch first try though, or at least first set of tries. So he's not too far behind. And we've got synced Ridley fights meanwhile on the left side of the screen, which is pretty hype. Looks like Firebat is a little bit ahead, and Ridley is dead for him. And it should be dead after this pogo pattern for J-Ro. What you'll see some runners do is they will use super missiles during the second half of this fight, since super missiles technically has a little bit higher DPM against Ridley, and you don't really need the super missiles until the end of the game. So you'll see some runners do that, but J-Ro and Firebat just gonna opt not to. Just use the charge shots. And you can see that the E-Tank behind Ridley is technically up for grabs, but neither of them really need it, so they aren't gonna waste the 2-door transitions and item fanfare to pick it up. But it is technically a safety if you are worried about your health in Lower Norfair. And so, of course, next is going to be Meridia. They're going to be going through Botwoon and Dragon. This is technically the fastest possible boss order there is, doing a KRDP. Kraid, Ridley, Dragon, Fantoon. But this is the only category that actually gets to use that boss order, since doing that in a vanilla game would require you to do Suitless Meridia, which would be pretty slow, unfortunately. But like, for example, in Randomizer, if you pick up Gravity somewhere in Norfair, say, it is ideal to do Kraid, Ridley, Dragon, Fantoon. So just a little, I don't know what you want to call it, advice? Little trivia, I guess. Ridley's looking awfully dead for Nintoaster, and he gets a pretty clean fight. You do see J-Ro having a bit more health than the rest. That doesn't matter too much, but it is nice. I don't know, do you have any questions? Did I miss something that... I should have explained.
I will admit I am helping to make sure the next run is going, so I have not been paying full attention, but it seems like they're past one of the big hurdles of the run. I know you were talking about like the two biggest hard parts of this run. Are there any parts that aren't necessarily dangerous, but it's really easy just to lose a bunch of time on coming up?
The best one I can think of is probably Fantoon. Aside from just the RNG of getting like, since there's 3 different patterns, fast, mid, slow, and the time difference between a fast and a slow is pretty significant, but it's actually fairly easy to mess up the strats, which will cost you another round, potentially up to 12 seconds if you get another slow. But that's the only really big one I can think of. Everything else is pretty streamlined from here. So coming up for Firebat, as well as Jero right after him, you'll see why the X-ray was so important. Of course, even though you can't see X-ray's icon, it is there. The runners do have it. And like mentioned in the RBMBO race, using X-ray will actually reset the boss's iframes. And since Plasma passes through bosses, not counting Ridley, since the programmers hard-coded Ridley to not do that, it means Plasma can hit them multiple times, and like you just saw with Batoon there, the boss gets basically one shot as soon as it appears. This is another E-Tank you could technically pick up if you really wanted the safety, but you don't really need it. So even though there's no need for safety, there's still a lot of places where, like in an emergency, you can pick up extra health if you're feeling dangerous, or I guess feeling in danger, I should say.
If you're not feeling frisky?
Yeah, if you're not feeling frisky. You actually saw both Firebat and J-Ro do the full halfie. Really impressive stuff. But it actually doesn't save as much time as it does in other categories, since they have space jump in order to just jump across that room. It still saves time, obviously, but it's not as big a deal as it is in other categories. Like, I think just jumping across is faster than doing the normal halfie, so it's only really worth if you can do the full halfie. And you see another X-ray here on Dragon. So I believe it takes 16 frames to for the iframes to reset, and then another 5 frames to reactivate X-ray after you deactivate it. So optimal X-raying involves pressing the button about 3 times a second. So you see J-Ro getting a really clean Dragon fight, and Firebat did before that, although it wasn't quite as good. Still really good. And so both J-Ro and Firebat, I actually don't think Firebat tried for it, but J-Ro tried to get a spike suit there. I'm not sure if it was explained, but I'm also not sure if I can do a very good job explaining it. But since they don't get a blue suit from Dragon, since they aren't using sparks, they would have to get a spike suit there, which of course is just a stored shine spark. By doing the trick off of the electric turrets, but unfortunately neither of them got it. So once again, they can just jump across the room. It's not too much of a time loss, but it is a time loss. And Toaster getting a little bit trolled there. One of the enemies got frozen, which running into a frozen enemy stopped his run, so he couldn't continue running through the speed blocks. So coming up here is a frame-perfect trick that only works 50% of the time. We call it the foosball, and it's doing a spring ball jump right out of this little crevice right here. Unfortunately, Firebat does not get it, but it actually saves a decent amount of time, I think, but it's really inconsistent, and it's mostly just a swag thing. So we'll see if either of our other 2 runners can get it.
Sometimes the swag strats that save small amounts of time are the most important strats.
Yep. Of course I say that, and then I look away as J-Ro does the room, so I don't know if he actually got it. Whoops. So another little thing here, actually, you talked about time losses. This is actually kind of significant because it has happened in a race before. Remembering to go right to go to the wrecked ship instead of going left to finish the game, since normally when you're going that way in a normal run, you would already have wrecked ship done. So remembering to go to wrecked ship has actually cost a runner a win in a race before. Not gonna mention any names, but they know who they are.
So I do just want to quickly mention that we got a pretty beefy raid there from ZFG. So thanks everybody for coming over and joining us while we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of Super Metroid. Since we just got a whole bunch of new viewers, why don't you give them a quick overview on GT code once, Fantoon's done?
All right, well, first I really want to mention this Fantoon fight. So you can do the X-ray strats, the charge plasma X-ray, resetting the boss's iframes, but you have to hit Fantoon first. If you do it right away, right when he opens his eye, he'll immediately shut his eye. So you saw Insane Firebat just shoot a missile at Fantoon and then do the X-ray strat. It's fairly simple, but you can mess it up fairly easily. And looks like J-Ro got a pretty clean fight as well. But what this is, it's GT Classic. So there's a dev code in the game that gives you every item in the game if you enter a certain room with all the face buttons held down. And so what this category is getting to that room, which is deep into Lower Norfair, as fast as they can, and then finishing the game since they have every item. And you're joining right at the end here, where the runners have already gotten every item and are on their way to finish. Unfortunately, Nintoaster is a little bit behind. He suffered a death getting down into Lower Norfair. So this run is actually really tricky. There's 2 very hard tricks, and then the rest of it is fairly easy. But those 2 tricks can be really trolly. Like Green Gate Glitch especially, which all 3 of our runners got fairly quickly. Even some of the best people in the world at getting Gate Glitch are sometimes just unable to do it. It's not consistent. Not super hard, but it can troll. But actually, Firebat and J-Ro are both making really good times. This is looking like about a 37, maybe even a really high 36 pace with a perfect Turian. Of course, they have to wait through the cutscene. So one thing to note here is you saw the stand-up glitch performed in the RBMBO run, and I think the Hundo run as well. But actually 700 energy is the exact amount of energy you need to do stand-up. So stand-up glitch in this category is super free. And I'll point that out again once we get there. But it lines up so well. That's
So how
all
many
I have
times
to
can
say.
they get hit before they're unable to do stand-up?
Okay, so like I said, their reserves have 300 energy. So they can get hit a couple times generally. Like they can take like 1 or 2 catch-ups depending on if the catch-up double hit. But ideally they don't get hit at all, since every point of damage they lose costs time, since it takes time to refill their health from reserves. But they can take usually a hit or 2 without worrying too much. And you also saw there all the runners, or J-Ro and Firebat, turning off Screw Attack and Varia. Turning off the Varia makes the Rainbow Beam, the scripted attack at the end of Mother Brain, do 600 damage instead of the 300 with Varia. So it makes stand-up a little bit easier to do, and the Screw Attack would prevent you from doing the easiest setup to the Zeb Skip, which is just a spin jump into the Zebetite with Rinka frozen in a certain spot. So turning that off, since you're menuing anyways to turn off Varia, lets you do that a lot easier. So we're coming up on the baby skip. There's actually a really sick new baby skip strat. We aren't going to see it in this race, unfortunately, but it involves basically using a spring ball and space jump to jump just straight up past the baby instead of jumping around him. And it's very fast. It's very hard. Some of the top runners are still scared to do it because it's ridiculous. Firebat doing the boring, I don't want to call it that because obviously it's a pretty tough trick, but the traditional baby skip gets a really fast skip actually, and he's just gonna continue on his merry way. J-Ro also getting a fairly fast skip, although he did end up shooting the enemies at the top of that room, so got a lot of lag. And you see there, if he had screw attack, he wouldn't be able to, because basically how that works is you're clipping into the Rinka, and if you have screw attack on, you don't really clip, since screw attack isn't attack. So yeah, turning screw attack off lets you do that Zeb skip. There's a couple other methods that you can do without turning off screw attack, but like I said, since you're generally going to menu anyways, it's not really worth. Shoutouts to Firebat with the best amount of missiles.
So the runners have been putting split times in the SRL, and J-Ro mentioned that he might be on PB pace. So I'm curious to look out for that at the end of this race.
Yeah, like I said, I think J-Ro's PB is actually a mid 47, and he's running potentially a high 46 pace here. So this would be a PB. And you saw Firebat there. He had to use his reserves to refill his health. That's just standard for doing stand-up glitch in this category, but having just enough health means he can both stand up after the rainbow beam and doesn't actually need to damage himself down any further off of Mother Brain. So he's good to go just by refilling his health there. Just needs to... Firebat? I guess he's... Is he doing the skip? Maybe he's not. Or doing the stand-up, I should say. Oh, he is. Never mind. I'm obviously, I don't know about that setup, but it works. Gonna even damage himself down extra for swag. Actually, that's not totally for swag, because one of the big risks of doing stand-up is once Mother Brain, or once the baby fully refills your health, it will freeze in place and won't move again until Mother Brain hits it with an attack, and then it will snap back to Samus. So if the baby ends up getting stuck in a place where Mother Brain's onion rings here don't actually hit it, then you can't progress, because the baby will never die and the cutscene will never end. It's not a problem in 100%, since it will take most of the cutscene to refill your health, but here you have 700 energy, so your health will refill very fast, so that is something to be careful about. Luckily, Firebat did some extra strats there, doing a little bit of extra damage to himself to make sure the baby, or make sure his health didn't refill at an inconvenient time, and got a really fast stand-up glitch. And yeah, like I said, this is a high 40 or high 36 pace for Firebat. I think J-Ro's gonna be closer to a low 37, but still really close. And of course, time is at the ship.
Yep. I'm watching the SRL for when they hit done in the chat.
Yep, luckily the last run was low percent. They didn't really have very many items to get through the escape, but here they have every item, so the escape is going to be a lot less painful since they can do all of the strats that you would normally. Starting with the spark in the first room, which you saw. It's going to be pretty close. I think this is a 36 for Firebat.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yeah. And there it is. First place with a, what was the SRL time? 36 minutes and 52 seconds. That is very good for a race. And J-Ro wasn't too far behind.
Firebat also says that's a PB.
Well, it's a PB for him in a race, which is
Oh,
still
race
very
PB.
good.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, still, PBing in a race in a situation like this under, GDQ conditions. Not quite, obviously, but very impressive stuff from Firebat. And even J-Ro, only being about 40-ish seconds behind. Not too bad, considering their actual PBs are about a minute from each other. And like I said, Nintoaster unfortunately took a death early on, so he's going to be a little bit behind, but still making sub 40 pace, which is kind of the main goal for starting out this category. And so, yeah, being able to do that with a death is definitely not something to be ashamed of from Nintoaster. Good news is, I think he is an animal saver, so we might see some of that in this race, if you're the type that likes to see that.
I mean, our channel does have an emote dedicated to saving the animals, so if it happens, I'm sure we'll see a couple of them popping up. Yeah, J-Ro was about... Oh wow, he was only 8 seconds off his actual PB.
Yeah, you have to imagine, had he not done safety saves, since it's a race, that might have been a PB.
Yeah. But because it's an event a year for the anniversary, they all decided that they were going to take 3 safety saves, just so
Oh,
that they were all on
absolutely.
even footing, which is completely understandable.
Oh, I agree completely, but that I'm just saying it might give him more confidence during doing the category moving forward, since he knows he can beat that time. If he decides to do that, I don't know.
Alright, so you think Nintoaster's going to do it?
I think he's gonna do it.
You think he's going to do it?
He's actually not quite sub 40, unfortunately. As much as I was hyping him up for getting sub 40 with a death, he's actually, if he doesn't save the animals, he's running mid 40 pace right now. Oh, Firebat's saying he forgot to do the safety saves, so a little
Oops.
bit of a oopsie there, but he didn't need him, so so maybe that's why he got a race PB, not doing the safety saves when, like I said, he does the safety saves in pretty much every race, and just, I guess it slipped his mind there. And Nintoaster, what are you doing?
Oh, he skipped him.
Ah, sad days. But he is gonna finish with a time of 40 minutes and 25 seconds. And like I said, with a minute and a half time loss due to the death, that's still a really good time. And that's GT Classic.
All
It's a
right.
really fun category. I like it a lot.
It's pretty good timing, right as Firebat hit percentage right at the end. So thanks, Derp, for hanging out and giving us some commentary. And once again, thanks to Firebat, Nintoaster, and J-Ro for racing for us. Coming up next, we are going to have the double anti-bingo with Asjur and Just Defend. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few minutes with that.